All right, so Joe, do you have a cool Napoleon story?
Yeah, I do. I have one of my favorite. I guess it's kind of a quote. I don't want to spend a bunch of time explaining what it is because I can just say it.
Okay.
But one of my favorite, I'm gonna call it a quote. Quotes is from the Egyptian campaign, which they sort of kicked off by landing in Alexandria, and that was sort of their base of operations. And at some point during the campaign, the plague broke out, like the bubonic plague, and which is
That was the big one, right?
yeah,
Okay.
it's pretty important. Which is weird to think of like that being around 200 years ago, like the same time as America.
Oh yeah,
Because I don't know, I just kind of associate that with like medieval times.
yeah.
But yeah, that broke out like around Alexandria, partly because of French soldiers raping people that had the plague.
Oh yeah.
but
Yeah,
but that's not part of the story.
yeah. That's
But
yeah, incidental.
yeah, but yeah, that broke out there, and one of the surgeons that Napoleon had brought with him, because like there's a lot of people supporting the army, and he bring along besides soldiers. One of the like higher up surgeons, when the plague broke out, refused to work with any plague victims because it's a pretty big deal. It's not
Yeah.
the
It's like a death
European
sentence, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's 92% mortality rate.
Oh really?
So it's pretty
Pretty high.
yeah, it's pretty bad. And he refused to go near anyone who had it. So it's sort of a
I don't blame him.
yeah, it's understandable. But it's sort of punishment for not doing his job because he is like a doctor.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Like
yeah.
he's there to help
It's a
sick
surgeon.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, so it's sort of punishment for that. He had him sort of arrested and dressed in drag.
Napoleon had the surgeon arrested.
Yeah, and dressed as a woman,
Okay.
and he put this placard around him. Probably not personally, but
Yeah.
and then do it like a knighthood sort of thing. Yeah, but he had this done. He put this placard around his neck, which is one of the things that's like one of my favorite quotes. It said, "Unworthy to be a French citizen, he fears death," and marched him through the city with that. Which it'd be really easy to say, like, yeah, that's easy for Napoleon to say as a general, kind of not having to dig his hands into sick people.
Yeah.
But like Napoleon himself was sort of, I guess, brave in the face of that. Like he spent a lot of time visiting his hospitals and that sort of thing that were set up on the campaign. And there's like a particular incident that was famous. There's like a painting made about it where he was visiting a plague hospital with, I think it was a few of his officers. And there was a guy who had fallen down out, who had sort of collapsed outside his room, who had the plague, and was covered in plague sores. And Napoleon sort of picked him up and carried him to his bed. And the two officers with him were freaked out by this. Like they were appalled by it because they described this guy as being
the fucking emperor of France.
Yeah. Well, he was just a general at the time.
Oh, he's just a general.
But still,
okay.
he like no one was asking him to do that. Like he was in charge, and he picked this guy up, and the officers were freaked out because this guy was like covered in pus and blood and just was fucking dying of the plague. And
this dude, Napoleon, just embraces him.
Yeah, and carries him to a bed, and which, like, you can look at that as like that's definitely a brave thing and a cool thing. I guess a little disclaimer is part of it might have been that he just didn't know how the plague worked because he talked about later how, just from his experience, his understanding of the plague was that the people who died from it were the people who sort of got, like, basically he thought it was sort of, you were more susceptible to it if you were like bummed out about it, if you were like sort of submitted to it, if you like would like despair about how you're dying of the plague, and that he thought the people who kept their spirits up seemed like they would get through it a lot easier and would be fine, which probably not. 92% mortality rate. I'm sure a lot of those people who died weren't super bummed out.
I bet they were.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe they didn't die of the plague because they were bummed out. They was probably bummed out.
I'm sure they got the plague and that really bummed them out.
Yeah, but that was his opinion on it. Was that if you kept your spirits up, you'd be fine. And he even later claimed that he had gotten the plague while he was there, and that he just like sort of rested and took it easy for a few weeks, and it healed up, which there's no evidence to support. But that probably contributed to his bravery. Was just thinking that he'd be fine if he had it, but it's still a cool little bit.
Yeah, that's awesome.